Hi, my name is Kurt Hackbarth. I'm a member of Grassroots for Bernie Sanders, and this video is to give you an update on what occurred with the Puerto Rico Democratic primary, which took place yesterday, Sunday, June 5th. I can basically sum up the Puerto Rico primary in one title, which is Chronicle of Chaos Foretold. If you saw my earlier video, you would have seen that the major problem in the primary on Sunday was the reduction in polling places from 1,510, which was the earlier agreement, down to 455, which was then reduced to 432, and the final number was somewhere around 360. What were the results of this closing of polling places? Well, in 2008, in the primary between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, over 380,000 people voted in that primary. Yesterday, the votes are still being counted because the poll workers took a day off today. It looks like the final number of voters will be around 90,000 or so. That is more than 4 times less than the number of people who voted in the last contested primary in Puerto Rico. Why was this? First of all, there was the reduction in the number of polling places. Second of all, there was a huge confusion as to where those polling places actually were even going to be. The list for which polling places were going to be open changed 5 times or so in the week before the primary. So the practical effect was that on Sunday, yesterday, people had to, first of all, go to their local voting precincts to vote in local primaries, which took place the same day. That is, the Puerto Rico Democrats decided, on purpose, to put the Democratic primary on the same day as the local primary. That was their decision. Problem was, the local primaries then used up poll workers. So people had to go to their precinct or their polling place first, stand in line, vote, then in many cases go to a totally different polling place and stand in line again in order to be able to vote in the Democratic primary. If you look at my Twitter, Kurt Hackbarth, and scroll down, you'll see a whole series of photos I posted that were sent in of the lines that were there that day, yesterday. In 90-degree heat with humidity, people of all different ages having to stand in line up to 3.5 hours or more. Many people stood in line for many hours and then at the end were unable to vote. This is truly a travesty. To top that off, Sanders poll workers did not receive their certifications. In other words, in order to work the polls, you have to be certified. They weren't certified until the night before the election, about 8 hours before the election. A lot of people never got their email. So when the polls opened on Sunday, there was chaos. People showed up, they didn't know what to do, they didn't know where to go, voters didn't know where to go. Because voters were not voting in their own polling place, in many cases, but they had to go to another polling place in the same precinct, there was no voter roll there with the people who were registered to vote at that particular polling place. So that meant that a lot of people were just entered in by hand with their voting credential, their voter ID card. Their thumbs were not marked off with indelible ink, so there was no way to control if they would then go on to vote somewhere else. It was a chaos. And then at the count again, at the end of the night, what to do with the ballots, how to get them in. To top that off, the early prison voting that took place a couple of days before the primary, they weren't going to allow Sanders observers in until pressure was placed on to get them in. And then a very disturbing article came out in the Primera Hora newspaper that members of the organization Las Nietas had threatened prisoners, including death threats, in order to not vote for Sanders and to vote for Clinton. On the basis of early prison voting results, Kenneth McClintock, who was the number 2 in the Democratic Party, Puerto Rico Democratic Party, came out and said early voting favors Hillary Clinton, when he had no way of knowing that because those votes were supposed to be sealed and not counted until Sunday. He later deleted that tweet. So this is the situation you have. And as I said at the beginning of this, the chronicle of a chaos foretold. It's to be noted that the 2 people in charge of this primary election are Clinton supporters. That's just the fact. Roberto Prats, who's the head of the Puerto Rico Democratic primary, is a Clinton fundraiser, was the co-chair of the Clinton campaign in 2008 in Puerto Rico, co-authored a book on that campaign. I don't think he's going to be co-authoring a book on this year's campaign. Was going out and campaigning for Clinton on Univision television, in the newspaper, in interviews. Kenneth McClintock, he of the Tweet, was also avidly campaigning for Clinton up until the night before the primary, when McClintock was still trying to scare up poll workers for Clinton. And this goes to another very important point that I'd like to mention in this video, because a rumor started spreading around, and then, once Prats and McClintock were caught in all of this, then what do? Well, you make something up. So Lucio Ortiz, who is a member of the DNC, came out and said that the Sanders campaign had requested that the polling places be reduced. Pretty outlandish, because supposedly the Sanders camp didn't have enough poll workers. Actually, the camp that didn't have enough poll workers was the Clinton camp, and that can be confirmed with McClintock's own tweet, plus the fact that on polling day yesterday there were times at several of the polling places there were Sanders poll workers there, and there weren't Clinton poll workers. Of course, MSNBC dutifully picked this up, and without doing any digging, just reported it. The fact of the matter is that the decision to reduce the polling places was the Democratic Party's. The decision to place the primary on the same day as the local primary was the Democratic Party's. And as the Sanders campaign said last night, they had been arguing all along, ever since the idea was to change it from a caucus to a primary, that the 1,500 polling places be maintained. So, in order to sum up what is a very sad situation, we have a disenfranchisement of, we don't know exactly how many. A month ago, Roberto Prats was saying there was going to be 700,000, up to 700,000 people participating in this process. 90,000 participated. So if Prats' optimistic figures to believe, 610,000 people were disenfranchised. If we only go by 2008 numbers, then, well, only about 290,000 or so people were disenfranchised yesterday. And this was actually something that was totally preventable. If there was less money this year, if there was less of a budget this year to hold the primary, by getting all of the camps involved, by preparing things ahead of time, and by acting in good faith, this primary could have been made to work. Instead, everything possible was done to hold up the process, to confuse the process with the whole thing of the polling places, the changing of the locations, the refusal to give out certifications, the problems with the prison voting, and the problems at the polling places yesterday. So it's led to a situation where the voter suppression in Puerto Rico was the worst we've seen yet in this primary cycle. So, Roberto Prats and Kenneth McClintock have some explaining to do. I hope they do it, and I hope they're called to account. One final point, we were trying to get this news out a week and more before this happened, ever since Prats made his announcement that the polling places were going to be reduced on May 27th. Had the media shone some light on this, perhaps things could have changed ahead of time, and the primary wouldn't have had to have been the disaster that it was. So that's the report for now. And final point, if you don't want voter suppression to happen, turn out and vote in large numbers tomorrow. Unfortunately, we've seen that your vote cannot be guaranteed. It can be taken away from you, so you have to defend your right to vote. Thank you.